Hi folks, and welcome to Gotham City Nights, our channel dedicated to everything related to Batman Miniatures Game 3rd Edition. This series of videos looks at the tactical side of playing BMG, helping you hone decision making, situational awareness, and hopefully giving food for thought that will help you get more out of this great game the next time you play. We've given it the moniker Lightning Reflexes. However, if you are new to BMG and want to learn what it is and how to play, we have an entire series of videos dedicated to that you should probably check out first. Other than that, let's jump right in to today's topic. So today in our Lightning Reflexes topic, we're going to look at the decisions we make in the deployment and raise the plan phases. These will be basically looking at our planning of the turn ahead and the game ahead, trying to maximize what we can get out of the next time we activate. First up, let's look at what I would like to refer to as turn 0, which is the board setup and your deployment. First thing up in the board setup, obviously no control as the player over the actual buildings, but if you look at the first step that you have a choice in, once you've rolled off to see who is placing the urban furniture, the lampposts are the first and sometimes most important things you get to do in turn 0. With lampposts, you get to place them, outside of 2 inches of the board edge, but pretty much anywhere else as long as it's not within 8 inches of another lamppost. You should look to use these lampposts to fit your crew. If you have a lot of guns and there's shooting alleys that you'd like to light up, then that's where you need to put them, where you think your opponent's going to come. Or if you're a crew that wants to sneak up and be unseen, you can do that horrible thing of putting them on top of rooftops or behind blind corners, or you can actually set them up in such a way where one might actually deny your opponent placing another by placing it in such a way that they can't place within 8 inches of that. Next up, the same idea comes of sewers. You have to look at sewers with mobility in mind. If you're a slow crew, then you might want to put sewers in a place where they can easily reach either the other side of the board or the middle of the board. You have to be aware of the board shape and the deployment types that are potentially in the deployment deck. I will bring up an example here of a time where I set up a sewer looking to hopefully use it to teleport across the board most of my very slow crew, and then the deployment type that came out was the dual deployment, which ended up basically being right over the sewer itself, meaning that I couldn't actually access it with all of my crew. So think about those things, bear them in mind, place the sewers in such a way that it's going to benefit your type of crew. Again, if you're really fast, you can put them on rooftops. They are supposed to be air vents, air ducts if they're on rooftops thematically, but it gives you access if you really need to a bit of elevation, or it just again denies your opponent the opportunity to teleport to somewhere useful. Deployment itself is obviously based on the deployment type that comes out of the deck, and as such, if you're still the person who won the role in the pre-game phase, then you have a choice of which side which deployment zone to take. So again, look at the board, look at the corners or the side of the board which is going to be potentially where you're going to set up. You don't have to go north-south, you can actually fight east-west across the board. Don't just think because you've set up all your miniatures and all your stuff on one side of the board that you can't go over the other side and get a better deployment or a better gun line sort of down the middle of the board. So bear this in mind, try to take that into your decision whenever you're deciding where to set up. Deployment itself is yet another place where you can gain an advantage. So as we know, you split your crew into 2 groups, and if you're placing your first group, think about trying to give your opponent as little information as possible as to where your second group might go. If you pop your leader down in the first group, well, they're going to pretty much guess that due to the Inspire rule, you're going to want to place pretty much all the rest of your henchmen near that leader. So maybe you'll hold your leader back. If you have a free agent and a sidekick, maybe use them because they won't benefit from Inspire, so we'll give your opponent absolutely no information as to where you might set up. So don't tip your hand. Obviously, think about what you want to achieve in your first couple of turns, whether you want to flank with a couple or you want to just bring the whole mob up the middle of the board. Next, we look at the hidden and undercover. Those miniatures obviously get to deploy a little bit further forward or as far forward as you would like. You don't always have to be as far forward as possible. It's not always the best to be right beside your opponent or get one attack in before they go. Remembering that obviously henchmen are going to be left without Inspire that far forward unless they have a radio. I always like to think about it, if you are a patient crew, you can set these folks up, 8 inches away from your leader, 8 inches forward, meaning they get their Inspire, meaning they can pop down a suspect, then move, then pop down another suspect in the first turn. It creates that sort of forward base that is already sort of a threat for your opponent to come at, and it gives you a little bit of presence on the board. So now moving on to the actual planning that you'll do before a turn. Planning that you do before a turn is obviously just phase 1 and phase 2. You take the lead, play any cards that you should, and then you raise the plan. So raising the plan is mainly what we're looking at here in decision making. Turn 1, I'm going to coin the phrase here. Turn 1 is like the golden hour that they refer to on Instagram, where everything is perfect. The light is perfect for your lovely photo to go on Instagram. Selfie on the beach, that sort of thing. Whereas in BMG, turn 1 is golden hour because you're probably not always going to have a miniature in your face looking to remove 2 or 3 of your henchmen, or a really sticky situation that you have to really, really think about which one to activate at which time. There's less read and react to what's going on, unless your opponent, throws you a loop. So the plan here really should be to execute what you want. Obviously, still take into account your own threat ranges, your opponent's threat ranges. You have full control over Inspire in this first round. Your deployment should be good enough that you have the people inspired that you want to be inspired. But then you also have control to make sure that Inspire carries over to turn 2. Look for the guaranteed scores, guaranteed points in your deck. Those sort of things which are based on suspects being out, or more suspects than your opponent, or certain formations of suspects, things that that you can guarantee and get scoring, get them out of the way and move on to the things that are going to be more problematic. And actually the one thing you can really, really foul up the rest of your game is if you try and overextend in first turn. Watch for getting one miniature caught out of position that can just be swarmed next turn without any risk. Watch for shooting alleys, watch for sewers where your opponent can pop someone through and cause some sort of havoc. And if you need to, you can always beat up one of the lampposts if they're causing you any sort of issue. What you want to do is plan to set up a camp, a forward base, and obviously an amount of suspects for, I would refer to them as resources. Not the resources on your cards, but like for scoring those points that you're going to lean on for the rest of the game. And what you want to do actually as well, if you've got any guns, is get them into a position in turn 1 where they can basically threaten your opponent's list for the rest of the game. So turns 2 and 3. Golden hour has come and gone. You're now looking at your opponent's miniatures thinking which one is going to be the one to wipe me off the board. Depending on whether you are first or second in taking the lead on these turns, obviously we'll give you more information as to what your opponent is going to do because they've already placed their Audacity or you're placing your Audacity. But general key for turns 2 to 3 is to look at flexibility of activations, and then also look for key denial opportunities or removal of your opponents. You don't want to be throwing out anything too early in the turn that can be contested, like placing a snitch and giving your opponent 3 or 4 activations to figure out how to cancel it, for example. You want to do that as late as possible, and probably for as cheap as possible with just a henchman with an Inspire, rather than having to worry about too much. You know, this is the opportunity where you're probably going to all be within threat range of your opponent. Try and take something out before it activates, preferably with Audacity, because that's really going to hurt your opponent. They only get 4 Audacity, and if you take a miniature out before it activates, then it's turn 2, then they've lost 3 activations for the entire game, and that's costly. You know, even if it's only a henchman, that's still going to cost them in the amount of cards that they're going to be able to score, because, as we talked about before, an activation is basically an opportunity to score most of the cards that are available to you in your decks. You have to think at this point in time, obviously, if you're the aggressor in this fight, or you're someone who is trying to basically stave off your opponent for as long as possible, you can always sacrifice things. It's not the worst thing in the world to lose a miniature, as long as it's served its purpose, as long as it's maybe taken its activation this turn. What I would suggest is you ward against attributing Audacity that will die or not be used. Try to put it on, again, the guarantees, the things that you know you're going to get use out of, not just your efficient pieces. It doesn't always have to be your most 4 expensive miniatures on the board, but you want to ward against being too predictable and make sure you cover your vulnerabilities. Turn 4. Turn 4 is the culmination of all of your decisions up to this point, but obviously you've still got planning to do when it comes to turn 4. What I would like to say is it's the most important at this point that you don't get left at the altar. You don't get left with an Audacity in your hand that you can't use. You know, at this point you need to know your win condition, so throw aside all those ideas of counting up scores at the end of the game. The decks, the cards that have been scored are public knowledge. Count them up as you go. Know how many points you're ahead, or know how many points you're behind. Know what sort of things you're going to need to do to get more than your opponent to win the game. Also, don't go beyond counting cards. You know what your opponent has already scored in terms of what cards. Is there snitch left to score? Do you have to worry about it? Do you have to worry about them prioritizing punching you out because they might have actually gone through all of the cards that'll actually get them benefit from doing so? Plan, obviously, the cards that are left in your deck. Know them as well. Know the likelihood of, right, I need to go and place an invasion, and I need to do it early in the turn, because if I roll a 6 on the invasion, maybe it'll not tick down in time if I'm one of the last ones to activate. So it's really about getting smart about what's going to win you the game. And at this point, cowardice might actually be the better part of valor. It might be better to run off the other side of the board. Might not feel as satisfying than popping a couple of punches into a henchman's jaw, but those couple of punches might not get you anything at all. So you have to think about these sort of things. I wouldn't normally plan to kill or remove things in this turn unless it's a key way to deny your opponent an important activation, or there's a nice big juicy card in your hand that's going to get you points for doing it. Because killing things is it's dicey in this game. It's never guaranteed, even with some of the best things in the game, especially in hand-to-hand combat, because the opponent always gets to roll blocks. So leaning too hard into that will probably leave you frustrated more times than it won't. So always consider that when you're looking to put out your Audacity and planning your turn ahead. So that's all that I would say about the planning that goes into not just the deployment, but also the raise the plan phase that you'll get through the game. Again, these are probably my own very controversial views, but it's just putting a bit of logic behind what you're doing, having a plan rather than just mashing the Audacity down out of your hand as soon as you see that your 4 biggest models are still alive. And obviously, I'll say it again, the rule of cool, doing something fun might be the way you want to play this game. That's absolutely fine. The rule of cool is always going to win out. I'm never going to tell anybody not to have fun when playing a game. But if you're looking to also sort of press on competitively and do your best points wise, then this is always an option to think about it in this sort of way. So again, thank you folks for watching, and we'll see you next time. All that's left to say is thanks for watching this short video. Stay tuned to the channel by subscribing to get the all-important next dollop of content. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please leave us a comment. Also, you can watch us put the theory into action in our battle reports, and to continue the discussion, you should probably call into the Arkham Rejects Discord server that I'll link below. Catch you next time, folks.